Let's do this, I guess. Jesus. If you're wondering why I look like that one firebender from Avatar, it's psoriasis. Love my life. I really do, though. Psoriasis can't bring a bitch down. I haven't put a lot of thought into like where I'm gonna film this video. I did write some stuff down for it, so I'm not completely unprepared, but I somewhat so yeah. Let me grab my wheelie chair. Alright, this feels like an okay spot. This is what we're gonna go with. This is where we're doing it. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about me. Who I am, what my story is, why I have the beliefs that I do, how I've developed them. It's a little bit about that. I should say that I don't necessarily love talking about my past self because I think that ego really likes to cling to this concept of storylines of like, this is what I've lived through and this is why I am the way that I am. And it can really develop our sense of self into a negative way that's clinging on to the past. I never try to do that. I try to live in the moment as much as possible. However, I do think that me sharing my story could be helpful to some of you out there who are struggling with some of the things that I have struggled with in my past, because it sure as shit has not been all sunshine and daisies, right? It's been a hell of a ride, and I'm very thankful for that ride because it's led me to this present moment. So yeah, all that aside, let's just get into it. I'm gonna tell you about me. Who am I? Where I come from. I was born in like a smaller town in Pennsylvania, in York, Pennsylvania. It was called Dallastown. Lots of cornfields, pretty trees, small town people, white folk, conservatives. That's where I was born into. First decade of my life was pretty good. I was always very curious and full of imagination. Me and my brother would like go out into the woods and build crazy forts and pottery out of clay and like toy weapons out of sticks and stuff like that, and just basically live in our own world of things. And I really just felt like a lost boy, and I just felt pretty free to do whatever I want in those times. I started questioning things like God and time and whether Jesus could really see my thoughts or not, and whether time was real. If I was an alien on a different planet with a different sun, then would a minute, an hour, any of that shit even make sense to me? Very early on, though, I started experiencing things that I think a lot of people would probably tie with mental health. Like, when I first learned out that swear words were a thing, I would compulsively swear in my head as a little kid, like 6 years old, over and over and over again. And then I would feel the need to confess those things to my mom. And honestly, my mom was like, okay. And I'm glad she was. I'm glad she didn't yell at me for those things, because that would have just exaggerated the issue. But there was like a strangeness there. Or like I used to have these little leaves on the wallpaper in my room, and I would hallucinate those leaves turning into things and becoming bugs and scary shit like that. Like, there's definitely an interesting aspect of my mental function happening at that early age. Probably genetic as fuck, you know? But at that time, I really didn't think that it was something overwhelmingly negative. It didn't really make me suffer. It was just an interesting thing that I was observing, experiencing, being like, oh shit, I said fuck in my head, I gotta tell Ma. So I grew up a little bit. The middle school, high school time of our lives came up for me, and I was really introduced to a society for the first time. I started meeting people and having discussions about these concepts that didn't necessarily align with the things that I had been taught or that my parents and surrounding support system agreed with. My parents were very conservative when I was growing up. They've definitely loosened up a lot since my childhood, but growing up, they were very strict. Also, around that time, I'd say when I was 14, like a freshman, I started doing drugs and drinking pretty heavily. I'd say at first I was very curious about the fact that these chemicals have this ability to alter your thoughts and your mind and show you these things that were hidden in the subconscious and pull it forward. Loved marijuana from the first time I smoked it. But pretty quickly, the drugs that I was doing, especially alcohol and pills, became this massive coping mechanism for me. Coping for what is still a question that I attempt to answer, and it's kind of a difficult thing to answer. I think it was multi-sided for me. I think one big thing was I looked out into a world that I didn't necessarily agree with. I saw people that were just reacting to things and they weren't really taking time to use their minds, practice empathy, practice perspective, and it was extremely frustrating for me. I felt very trapped, and I also had created a monologue inside my head around those things, that I was the only person and that I was different for being able to do those things, and that other people were fucked up for not being able to see from a certain perspective or feel compassionate about certain things. And it made me really angry. At that time, me and my parents were also so back and forth. I was rebellious, doing what I wanted to do, acting against the things they believed in, and they did everything they could possibly do to try and control that. I felt like a prisoner there for a few years. I wasn't in control of what I wear, what time I had to go to bed, if I had a door on my bedroom or not, who I could talk to and be friends with, when I could leave the house or go outside. All of those things were completely controlled about my own existence, and it was driving me crazy. Of course, I didn't just give up to that. I fought it quite hard, and I was sneaky, and I lied like a son of a bitch, and all that did was escalate the situation so much more for me, because I'm lying, then my parents react to it, get stricter, and their strictness makes me want to break out more, and it just became this cycle of negativity and punishment and bad fucking vibes. There also was this factor of my own consciousness causing me discomfort. I've always been such an aggressive and intense thinker that my emotions are just so strong when I feel them. And for many years, I really never made a point to practice deep awareness of those feelings. I would just feel them, act on them, and that's not how you work through anything. That's how you do exactly what I thought I hated in the world, was just being reactionary. I was the thing that I hated. And I think a good bit of myself realized that, and that's why I developed this large ego complex. There was a time in my life, when I was around 17, 18 years old, that I thought I was so fucking special and important, and like my art or my words were gonna change everything. And the only reason I had to cling so hard to those beliefs were because somewhere inside there is this very soft spot that was fragile and was very much in dislike of the person who I thought I was, deep down, and these things that had been ingrained in my brain of over years. I hated that. So in order to not face those feelings of self-hatred, I created this ego that made me more comfortable and allowed me to stay blind to the truth. Right after I turned 18, I got the hell out, like a bat out of hell. I originally moved to Philadelphia for only like a month, and then after that I just really took off in my car with this girl that I had met, and we didn't have any plans. We were just gonna drive and drive and drive until we ended up somewhere, and that's exactly what we did. We ended up in Colorado. Woo! I didn't know anything about this state before I got here. All I knew was there's legal marijuana, and that's not why I came here. This girl I was with insisted that we come here because it was beautiful in the mountains. I had no idea Colorado even had mountains. Boy, was I in for one, man. Whew, the nature here. But her and I, we moved out here, and it wasn't an easy move. I left Pennsylvania with $400 in my pocket, and if you know anything about gas, traveling across the country, it takes around $350 to drive from Pennsylvania to Colorado, so that means I had about $50, but not even, because we had to eat along the way. So by the time I got out here, I had $0 to my name, and me and this girl, we were homeless for a while, staying in my car on people's couches until eventually we had saved up enough money to get a place of our own. During that time, life was still pretty rough. Um, Both her and I were dealing with our own individual shit that we had not properly handled or dealt with. Really became a shitty situation. There was a lot of drinking going on. We were pretty bitter and manipulative towards each other, and we also were doing some pretty illegal shit to make money and sustain ourselves. It was not the best type of living. And the whole time I knew that I was constantly having mental breakdowns throughout that period of like, what the fuck? Like, I escaped one situation to get into another one of my own creation. Like, I need to recognize this fucking pattern and get out of it. Eventually, things ended with that girl pretty roughly. I ended up calling the pow pow, and we separated. After she left, I was really alone for the first time. You know, I had moved across the country from everything and everyone I had ever known, and for the first time, there was not somebody else there with me along the way, and I was able to really put all of this energy into all of these beliefs and questions and just curiosities that I had been forming for years, because even throughout all of that shittiness, I still held this belief about this deeper meaning and things, that there was purpose in life, and that I just needed to figure out what that was. I was aware enough to see there was something special going on, but I just wasn't sure what. So whenever I was alone for that first time, I really did nothing but dive into those questions. You know, what is consciousness? What makes life worth living? How can I live the best life possible and get the most out of this existence? What is good and bad? You know, how do I live peacefully? How do I act compassionately towards others without compromising myself? Those were the kinds of questions that I was interested in finding an answer to and understanding. You know, right then I was really about 19 years old. Maybe, no, I probably wasn't. I was probably 18 and a half, 19. I really was only, that time felt a lot longer from when I had left Pennsylvania to when me and that girl ended and she moved back to Pennsylvania. That shit felt like forever, but it really was only 9 months, 10 months. Like, it was not a terribly long time there. After that ended, I spent really about 2 solid years doing nothing but thinking. I would wake up every day, sit down, and stare at a wall and think and just go through this rabbit hole of questions, almost insanity, honestly. And a lot of the time, I was taking extreme amounts of psychedelics during those meditative times. And really, like, that's the only thing I was doing. I got down to like 92 pounds in that point in time because I wasn't even really eating. I was so involved in thought, in, doing as the Buddha did, sitting, suffering, and thinking to find the root of everything, to find meaning, that everything else really went to the wayside a little bit. And it was interesting because, my ego in that time really shifted. There was almost a point where it hit a climax, and then from that climax, it exploded. And obviously, it's still here. She's still huge and multifaceted, but she's a lot healthier now. And that time period saved me. It let me recognize so much in my life and change so much about myself that was causing discomfort. I eventually started having the realization that I needed to go back out into the world again, so that's what I did. I went out, got a job, started making more friends again. With this transition came all of this new insight and new perspective to people out in the world, and that's honestly where I still am right now. Living, working, thinking, growing, repeat. I'm never going to tell you guys what to believe or that you need to listen to me. All I know is that I am 10,000 times healthier and happier. That's the key word, happier, than I was before, thanks to that time I spent realizing, thinking, diving into those concepts to help alleviate myself from all of those things that were causing me suffering before. There were times that I was self-centered, arrogant, and at times even mean. And I was so miserable while living like that. And at many times, I'd even convinced myself that it was never going to change from that reality, that that was it. That was finite existence for me. And that was just simply not the truth. Now I am shocked to look back on who I really used to be. It almost floors me at times because I am so different now. It's not like I've lost myself, but I've grown so enormously and cut out so many of those things that were making me unhappy. And that's really all I want for you guys, is to be able to do that too, is to be able to rein in that higher level of self, to get onto a new level of existence, a better level of existence, because that is out there for all of us, that is inside all of us. You have the potential to live this best superhuman life if you only recognize that ability, recognize that chance, and take advantage of it. That's it though, guys. That's really all I have for you today. If there's one thing that I would hope that you guys would take away from it, and you don't have to, but it is my hope, it's that life is a process. Nobody just wakes up one day and has all of the answers and is an enlightened being. It is a journey, and that journey for you could start today, could start right now in this moment, if that's what you want. That's an important realization to have. So, until next time, guys, take it easy.